Let me start by saying my father isn't dead. At least I don't think so. But I can see how the title might lead you to think that he is. To avoid confusing you any more than you probably already are, let me start at the beginning. My dad and I have had a pretty strong relationship. Ever since I was a child, he was always very supportive of me, putting up with my rebellious phase, and even allowing me to stay at home during those years of financial uncertainty we all face after graduating from college. Despite repeated calls for him to move in with me after mom died a few years ago, he insisted he wanted to remain living out his days there. He was getting older and years of cigarettes and fast food were finally beginning to catch up with him. Being as close as I was with him, it really pained me to see his health failing the way it was. His glassy eyes a parody of the once intimidating stare he would give me when I misbehaved. Eventually, I got a call from him a few days ago asking to stay with me for a while. He explained that after a recent fall in the bathroom, his doctor recommended he stay with someone until he felt well enough to return home. Despite being almost 70, he had a lot of pride and insisted on not being a burden. So I was a bit surprised that he took his doctor's advice and relented in taking up my offer. Needless to say, he didn't need to ask twice. I even offered to pick him up at home, but insisted on taking the bus over to my apartment to prove that he ain't no baby, as he would often repeat. My apartment is in walking distance to the bus stop, so we caught up during the walk. He didn't have much going on. In typical dad fashion, he waxed light about gas prices, his annoyance with the new diet his doctor set for him, and his idea to get a dachshund puppy simply because he liked the word dachshund. I work in advertising, so most of my working hours is at home staring at my laptop screen. So I got to prepare meals and spend more time with him. Everything was going well for us. I was even contemplating how I should ask him to stay for good, instead of returning to the old house. That was until the second night. In my job, I am often required to meet and discuss new projects with overseas partners and branches, which requires me to be awake to accommodate those in different time zones. It might have been around 2 a.m. when my semi-conscious brain picked up on it through the headphones attached to the computer. At first, I thought it might have been something from one of the other speakers on the Zoom call, but I realized no one else seemed bothered by it. Then I heard it again, this time louder. It was coming from the guest bedroom where Dad was supposed to be sleeping. As I got closer to the door, I heard it even clearer. "Why can't I see him then?" The voice was old, much older than my father. If I had a chance to guess, the person that voice belonged to someone who was easily pushing 100. Hoarse and rough like sandpaper. It was nothing like the sleepy, Midwestern drawl of my dad's voice. Confused and a bit concerned, I cracked the door to peep inside, only to see my dad snoring away under the guilt. At first, it occurred to me that he could be pretending to sleep, but even if he was, what was the alternative? After standing in a dark bedroom, staring at my elderly dad sleep for about 3 minutes, I eventually chalked it up to my imagination playing tricks on me. It wasn't a very satisfactory answer, but it was the only one I had. The next day pretty much went as expected. Dad ate his breakfast while I ran some errands. I considered asking him about the strange voice the night before, but eventually decided against it. I didn't want to give him the impression that I was hearing things or spying on him. That definitely wouldn't help my chances of him staying. I kept it to myself and convinced myself again that it was just my imagination running wild, combined with lack of sleep. Until the second night. I was focusing on a PowerPoint presentation when I saw a shadow pass by my door in the corridor outside my room. Naturally, I would have thought it was Dad's going to use the toilet or grab a snack in the kitchen, except the shape of the figure that passed the door was much shorter. Dad is at least 5'10". His shadow was for the most part, half the length of the doorway itself. I was wide awake this time. I paused before peeping around the corner in time to see my father. No, not my father. My father. A miniature child-sized version of him walking away from me. Same clothing he wore to bed a few hours ago. Same thin, silvery strands of hair at the back of his head, walking away towards the bedroom. I didn't understand what I was seeing. I still can't understand what I am typing here. Eventually, after about 30 minutes of intense debate in my mind, I decided to open the door of the guest room and see for myself. There he lay, my dad, regular height and proportions, fast asleep. I must have stood there for about an hour, staring at him snore and drool into his pillow, before finding the courage to head to bed. It was hardly a restful night. Everything from extremely early onset of Alzheimer's to overwork and stress crossed my mind. As usual, everything was normal as ever the following morning. Dad plunked down in front of the television complaining about CNN, while I studied him from across the room over a cup of coffee. I wish I could tell you I saw his skin quiver, like a costume or a second pair of eyes blink. Blink to give away some sinister alien form, but I would be lying if I did. The man muttering about politics on the couch in front of me was the same man who taught me about life and provided for me all those years ago. Most fears and jitters tend to seem ridiculous when the sun comes out, and this one was no different. I eventually overcame any initial apprehension and spoke with him about his night. It was restful with the exception of some mild headaches, but it eventually passed. Eventually he told me there was some medication at home he was supposed to be taking, but he forgot to bring it with him. After a brief scolding from me on how to be more responsible, I agreed to run back to his house and grab it for him. I was happy to be out for a while. It gave me an opportunity to clear my head from work and put things in perspective. I got to the house I spent my childhood and saw the front yard covered in high grass and weeds. Because of Dad's health issues and the fact that he was at my place for the past 3 days, I didn't exactly expect a rose garden with a topiary lawn, but this was insane. From the looks of it, the yard was intended to for at least 2 months. I walked past the mini Amazon jungle in front of my childhood home and used the key to unlock the weather-beaten brown door that was once beige, and the stench hit me almost immediately. Putrid and foul. I have read books that say the scent of a rotting corpse has a sweet undertone. But let me tell you, there was none of that in this situation. It was a raw, meaty smell that stimulates your most primal reflex to run. Laid out on the floor of the living room was the decomposing body of my father, eyes bulging, head twisted perfectly around. I felt sick. My empty stomach turned. It turned from the foul stench. It turned from the dead body of my father. It turned from the fact that I don't know who or what is in my house right now. I need help.